So good afternoon, everyone. And it's really nice to be back at the Abbey after being away for about 5 months. And I'll talk more about that another time because today I would like to talk about miracles. So, so last Monday we celebrated Losar, Tibetan New Year. And in case some of you may have forgotten, Losar is also the first day of what's called the 15 Days of Miracles. And this commemorates a time in the life of the Buddha when he demonstrated his miraculous powers. And it's said that any merit that we create on these 15 days is multiplied 100 million times. So it's a good time to make extra special effort to do positive things, create virtue, create merit, and so forth. So these miracles that were performed by the Buddha, it seems that wasn't really his own idea, but rather he was challenged by a group of 6 non-Buddhist teachers who seemed to be jealous of the Buddha and his popularity. Buddha was attracting a lot of followers, and these other teachers seemed to be jealous of that. And they wanted to show the people that they were better than the Buddha. So they challenged him to this display of powers. And the local king at that time, King Bimbisara, who was one of the Buddha's disciples, urged the Buddha to accept this challenge. So I won't go into the details about these miracle powers. This is something you can read about online if you're really interested. But in brief, the Buddha, on each of these 15 days, the Buddha created this kind of amazing, beautiful, miraculous display. But he didn't only do that. He also gave teachings. So after, this amazing display, and everybody was just like ooh and ah and, awestruck, they felt faith in the Buddha. Their minds were open. And then the Buddha gave them teachings. He taught them the Dharma. And this turned out to be really beneficial for their minds because it said that, after these teachings, many developed bodhicitta. They aspired to become Buddhas themselves. Many became arhats, so they totally purified all their delusions. And many others just created enough virtue to be born as human beings and devas in their future lives. So it had very beneficial effects on the minds of the people present during these miraculous displays. And when I lived in Singapore back in the 90s, and I was teaching at Amitabha Buddhist Center, we would always be really happy and excited when it came to these merit multiplying days. And we would do extra Dharma activities in order to make the most of our time. And it seems to be that most people there didn't have trouble believing in these stories about miracles or believing in, merit multiplying days and so on. But I think that probably people in the West have a harder time believing in these things. One reason for that might be because our culture has been influenced by the so-called Age of Enlightenment, which happened in Europe starting in the 17th century. And as a result of that, our culture tended to value reason and science over blind belief and supernatural events and so on. So as a result of that, we tend to be more skeptical, and we might wonder, well, how can we be sure that the Buddha really performed these miracles, or they were just stories made up by his enthusiastic disciples? And how does it work that if I recite the Heart Sutra today, it's 100 million times more merit than if I recite it on some other day? How does that actually work? Actually, I did read something about that. some years ago, I was reading in I think it was one of Geshe Zopa's books, the commentaries to the Lamrim Chenmo, and in which he explained how that works. And I was trying to find it yesterday, but I couldn't find it. If any of you know, maybe you can let me know where it is. But what I do remember, it was something about the devas. I mean, he was specifically talking about new moon days and full moon days, which traditionally in Asian countries, those are the days when people go to the temple, they take precepts, they do extra virtuous things. And so he explained that the reason those days are merit multiplying days is because the devas up in their heavenly realms are looking down and checking out what human beings are doing on those days. And if they see human beings creating virtue, they rejoice. They're really happy. And then the message gets passed on to higher and higher deva realms. So more and more of these devas are rejoicing. Look at what these human beings are doing. Isn't that wonderful? So they're creating, all this merit from rejoicing. So that's the reason why on new moon days and full moon days it said that merit is multiplied. So the same may be true for these other merit multiplying days, like the period that we're in now. I don't know for sure, but anyway, that's an explanation. There may be other explanations as well. So I think it's natural and understandable that we have doubts, questions about these kind of things, and I'm sure there are also Tibetans nowadays who wonder if these stories are really meant to be taken literally. And in fact, the Dalai Lama himself, he sometimes expresses doubts about some of the things that are mentioned in the teachings that are difficult to verify through science or through direct perception. And he also says that we shouldn't just blindly believe things, but we should question, investigate, and use our common sense. So for myself, I can't be sure if the Buddha really did perform these miracles, and if my merit really does multiply on these certain days. But I realize I also can't disprove them, so they might be true. And I do find that on these merit multiplying days, I do have this enthusiasm to do more virtue, more things that I don't normally do. And then as a result of that, I feel happier. I feel like, I've made good use of my time. I've created virtue, and I have more virtue, more merit that I can dedicate at the end of the day. So I find, it doesn't really hurt to believe in these things, to take them on faith. They might be true, and it's good to make use of these merit multiplying days. And it really does inspire me to make good use of my precious human life. Also, another thing that might be helpful, if we do have difficulty believing in these miraculous powers attributed to the Buddha and also other Buddhist masters we read about in the scriptures and the stories, we could focus more on their inner achievements, because that's the real miracle. I mean, the real miracle is that the Buddha found a way to totally transform his mind from an ordinary, confused state of mind to a state of mind that's like totally awakened. That's amazing. That's really amazing. And to do that, he had to clear away the two kinds of obscurations. One kind of obscuration are the afflictive obscurations. That means all the delusions, all the disturbing emotions, greed, hatred, jealousy, pride, ignorance, confusion, and so on. So he managed to just totally clear those out of his mind such that they would never arise again. So those prevent the attainment of liberation and keep us in samsara, cyclic existence. So I mean, that itself is a miracle, to be able to do that with your mind. Then on top of that, he also cleared away the other kind of obscurations, which are sometimes called cognitive obscurations. They are the obscurations that prevent omniscience, enlightenment, full enlightenment. So those are just the imprints left over after the disturbing emotions and ignorance and so on have been cleared away. And they prevent the mind from functioning to its fullest extent, to doing what we can do with our mind. And as a result of that, the Buddha reached the state of awakening, Buddhahood, which means You know, he totally saw all phenomena just as they are, all conventional truths, all ultimate truths. No, nothing preventing him from seeing things as they are. And he also had this incredible compassion and love for every living being throughout the universe, and totally dedicated to helping each and every one of us, however long it takes, until we have also reached that state of enlightenment, that state of awakening. So that's amazing. That's the real miracle, that the Buddha did that, and then he showed the way for us to be able to do it as well. So we could use this period of time to just think about the achievements of the Buddha and his followers, those who also attained awakening, who attained various stages of the Bodhisattva path, who attained arhatship, and so on and so forth, and be inspired to try to make the best use of these 15 days. So up until the 9th of March, these are the days of miracles, and any merit we do is multiplied 100 million times. So I hope you feel inspired to make a bit extra effort to study and think about and practice the Buddha's teachings and start to experience a little bit of a miracle in ourselves, the miracle of transforming our own minds.